Hello,
Hey,
everyone.
good morning.
Good
Morning.
morning.
Morning in Central European time
Yeah,
zone.
exactly. Good one.
I mean, for now, all three of us are located in pretty much similar places. But for our guest today, I want to insist saying that.
Yeah, for sure. We need to think out of the box. And of course, also our backstage host, Sid. It is kind of lunchtime for him, late lunchtime. Maybe?
It's already even like before dinner, I would say.
Okay, yeah.
Oh
So
my
one day I will be fluent in time zone. So
No worries. I just came back from the same geological location from him
so
just
you know,
3 weeks
yeah.
back. So that's why I know.
That's awesome. How are you doing?
Doing well. And how are you
Fine.
too,
Yeah.
Alba, Josephine?
Just waking up.
And I see in the
Because it's
chat
the
somebody's
breakfast.
joining from Spain. That's so cool.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Spanish
Good
people in
morning.
the audience.
Yeah.
That's so
Awesome.
cool. Oh.
No, but Arisa already mentioned we have a very special guest today, and he's going to join us in a second. And we're all actually super excited, and we have been for some time kind of planning this.
Yeah. For some time.
Yeah, we're super excited. Do you want to do the honors, Alba? Because you managed to.
Yeah, of
Bring me
course.
here. Yeah.
Actually, as you can see in the title, I think, of the stream, we will be talking about the state of JS. So that's the main point of today. And think about who can be the guest. Well, in this case, we invite the creator or one of the people that creates the state of JS and the first that we all love, and we always check for the new trends or what we need to be up to date with. So yeah, let's welcome Sacha. Woo! Yeah, we don't have a button for giving applauses.
Maybe.
But we can make noise.
Thank you.
Glad to have you
Thanks
here.
thanks for coming.
So it's
Maybe
around 4:30 in your place, right? PM.
5:30 actually. Yeah.
5:30.
Yeah. Well, I should say I'm in Japan, so that's why it's a bit later than Europe.
Really
yeah,
cool.
that's why
Really
for us this is a breakfast edition, right? But we're so thrilled to have you here. We already mentioned you're the creator of State of JS, which we all nerded out over when it came out, the latest edition. And is there something else we should know about you? What do you do on a day-to-day? How did you get started with State of JS? Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So, yeah, like you mentioned, right now I'm working mainly on the state of JS and state of CSS surveys. We also had state of GraphQL. So, as you might imagine, I'm trying to do like as many surveys as I can, and who knows, maybe in the future, state of React, maybe we'll see. But before that, I used to do a bunch of different things. Like I did a lot of design for a while. And because I was a designer mainly, when I wanted to get more into web development, I thought Meteor was very appealing to me. So that was back in 2012, 2013. And Meteor, it's less popular now, but at the time it was a very popular all-in-one JavaScript framework. And that appealed to me because you didn't have to figure out how to connect Express to React to this, to that, and build your own stack. You could just have this thing that just worked out of the box. And I actually wrote a book about Meteor. So I was very deep in that scene. But then when it came time to like move forward and kind of explore the rest of the ecosystem, I got very, very confused because I hadn't really kept up with the times. And that was maybe around 2016. And I thought it was very hard to figure out what was popular, what was worth investing your time in, what was maybe just like more a passing trend. And that was actually the impulse behind creating the first State.js survey. So it was mainly to help myself figure out, what to learn next and where to focus my energy, coming from like that kind of more self-contained ecosystem of Meteor.js. And then since then, since the survey has been pretty popular, I've kept doing it. I've tried to improve it year over year, and like I said, launch other surveys. But I keep waiting for people to be like, okay, we figured out JavaScript. We don't need the surveys anymore. Everybody has decided what to use, but it never happens. So I keep doing the survey.
Don't feel like it. And actually, the first State of JS, it was on 2017. Did you say?
16, I think.
16. Okay, I didn't finish my degree at that year. I mean, I started developing in 17. So yeah.
Okay. I was actually not a developer. I was actually a cabin attendant at the time.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's way cooler than that.
No, but it's really cool to know that the State of JS was, starting a really long time ago. I thought that it was like the past year, not the other year. Like when the COVID started, I think that the State of JS started at the same time. And then it's not that way. I need to check back the other ones, actually.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems pretty recent, but I guess, time moves differently when you get older. So yeah, I guess 2016 was a while back. But yeah, I mean, I had already been coding for a while then, but I guess I really got started with web development with around when jQuery was popular.
Oh, okay.
So I really miss jQuery. Maybe I should just get back to that.
But it's so relatable to be confused by the JavaScript universe. Like, at least for me, when I started out, I would literally Google all the different terms. I was like, oh, so this is a framework too. I had no idea. So this is super, super helpful.
Yeah. And you mentioned that in the beginning, you kind of got the idea for yourself to make it clear what is popular and what are the stuff people are using it, right? But I need to tell you that I also had the same question, when I started to, change my career, because at the time, I mean, the sources out there were I would say less than nowadays. And it wasn't a COVID at the time. Also, when I started to study was 2017. So it's just a year later when you launched the State of JS. And there I started to study first in Japan, but then it was really less numbers of the online programming school, or even the schools where you can physically go. It was less, I would say, kind of choices to pick the front end technologies to learn. So I mean, I wished I really knew about that already at the time, but nowadays I really appreciate the State of JS information, because I can update myself, the knowledges, including how the others are thinking, how the others are making themselves familiarized with the new technologies and also with the new moves. So yeah, I think the demand would be even higher.
Well, that's good to know. And one more thing is, the main thing I wanted to add that was missing with the surveys is I ask if people are happy with the technology, or the exact wording is, would you use something again? And because I think it's very, it's relatively easy to get statistics about NPM downloads or GitHub stars, but that doesn't really tell you if people actually like the library or the framework or whatever, because, on NPM, it might be a dependency for something else. GitHub stars, it just means people clicked the star, but they might not even have tried out the framework. So I think it's still kind of the only place where you can actually get statistics on what we call now the retention, which is, would you use something again for your next project? And that's a really good proxy for knowing if people like a framework or not, and hopefully if it has a bright future ahead of it, or if it's kind of more behind the curve. Of course, I'm oversimplifying a bit, but it's still a useful data point, I think.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
We also had a look for, I mean, just out of curiosity to see maybe where we're going to put our energy, right? Like what kind of tutorials should we maybe focus on more? And so for us, it was a super valuable source in terms of where is the community actually going? Maybe something is not so hyped, but there's so many people using it because it's just a legacy framework that's used in large corporations. So it was super valuable. Yeah. Was there something in this year's report that really surprised you, maybe?
Well, there were a few trends, like Vite is super popular, like in all categories, all like interest, retention, everything is very high. And then front-end frameworks, there's a lot of movement, I think, not so much in terms of usage. I mean, if you look just at usage, of course, React, Angular, Vue, they're still going to be the main ones. But in terms of interest and retention, there's a Solid, Quick, are both pretty high. I need to look at the actual data, but yeah, it seems like there's kind of a new wave of tools, including Vite, Svelte also. And I think it's interesting, like, well, I mean, lots of people have already commented on those trends, but yeah, I think basically React is still very strong. And that's also impressive in itself. So you have React, you have Next.js, which are kind of the main players in this space right now. And the survey kind of confirms that they are actually, important and popular, which is not that surprising. But then, like I said, you have this other wave. So Quick, Solid in terms of meta frameworks, or what we call rendering frameworks. Astro is doing really well. And yeah, that's probably the main trends. Mono repos, that's something I'm interested in personally, and PNPM is doing really good. So, I mean, I don't think there's any like shocking trends that are gonna come out of the survey, because most people, if you pay attention, you're probably gonna be able to anticipate what the survey is gonna say, but it's nice to have a more data-backed approach, I think.
And yeah, I was wondering.
No, go ahead, Alba. We're too excited. We're just talking over each other all the time. Sorry.
No, because I was thinking that you that have more experience like looking into this data, there is any period of time that people, when launch a new framework, there is a huge trend and people really like it, and then they start stabilizing the framework, and then because I'm thinking that Vite is kind of famous right now, but of course it's new, so we are all hyped, but we don't see the drawbacks and the problems.
So what typically happens is that you have, there is a, maybe I can share my screen. Let me see.
Oh yeah, that would be cool.
So.
Nice, beautiful.
You can see a lot of tools, they have this arc or doing something like a boomerang trajectory, or so to explain this chart, on the x-axis here, it goes from negative opinions to positive opinions, and that basically means whether people want to learn it or not, or want to use it or not, so kind of a mix of all that. And then on the y-axis is just usage, so how many people in the world have used that. And so if you take a look at Webpack, for example, you can see the successive years. So as the years go by, of course, more and more people are using it. But then the opinions go, from being more and more positive to then after 2017 becoming more negative. And a lot of the tools have this same, kind of trajectory. So, I mean, Electron a little bit, what's this one? Rollup, even something new. And it doesn't mean that, it's not a bad thing. It's just natural that the more people use it, the more they're going to see the drawbacks of a framework or a library when they use it, for real world projects when they reach the limits. Because of course, when you're just trying something out and doing like to-do list or blocks, super simple things, you're only gonna see the best sides of the project, and then it's normal that there will be like a reality check or just a more realistic evaluation, and it will go down a bit. So that's a trend that you can see almost every time. And even something like React, you can see that there's a little bit more negative opinions than before, even as usage still goes up. So that's definitely something to be aware of. Like when the project just comes out, the like retention ratio will be like a 95%. Almost everybody, because the people who do use it at the beginning are probably going to be the diehard fans, the early adopters, and they're very invested in the ecosystem. And then later on that comes down a bit. But for something like Next.js, for example, there's a few projects like this where it does come down, but not that much. So that's where you actually know that it's kind of a stable project, because
nice.
It stabilizes around, let's say 90% or even 80% retention is still really good. So yeah, I think it's a good thing that you're mentioning this, because people might often interpret that as, it's going downhill or it's a bad sign, but actually it's just completely normal.
Like a normal life cycle almost, right?
Yeah,
where you can kind of calm down the whole hype train of, another shiny new frame. No, well, actually they all go through this. So that's like a very healthy perspective on things, in my opinion.
Just out of the curiosity. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was wondering, like, in your opinion, or from statistics, let's say like results and data, how long or how many years you think like you need the minimum data to see, like, to be able to tell, like if the technologies that you saw on the survey is going well or like maybe going down?
That's a really good question. I don't know, actually. Maybe if you have 3 years, if you have 3 data points, you can already kind of have a curve, right? You can know if it's still going up or going up and down. But I don't know. I wouldn't. Well, I have to say you shouldn't use only the survey as a way to evaluate that kind of thing, right? It should be one thing among others. Trying out the framework for yourself, asking people around you, and so on. But yeah, and also I don't think you need to wait like 3 years or 2 years for 3 editions just before you can decide what to use. If you want to use, quick today, I think that's probably fine, even though it's only been in the survey for 1 year. But yeah, after 2 years, it's probably a bit safer maybe to start evaluating options. But then again, it really depends on what you want to do. Like, are you interested in learning new things and improving your own skills as a developer? Because then, anything you learn is always going to be a good idea. Or is it more a case of, we need to build our new product and we need to fix something and they need to work for the next 15 years? And in which case, of course, no matter how cool the new framework is, I wouldn't recommend that, just because it wouldn't be like the wise choice in case something goes bad. So it really depends on the situation, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes I feel that in these surveys,
I'm kidding.
Actually, she's a React lover, so
people always say that we favor React, but and we use React for the survey itself. But it's true that React is fairly popular and you won't go wrong. But something like Solid, for example, has a very similar API and is I'm hearing really good things about it. So if you can take the risk and then bet your the future on Solid, that might actually be a really good choice as well.
And talking about that, I was thinking that it would be nice to have some kind of data on how the project is maintained over the time, because sometimes I feel that it's really nice that a new framework pops up, but what happens if people are not using it, so they don't invest much time in maintaining it, and then you spend a lot of time working on a project, and someday they stop maintaining the project. And this happened with Lerna, I think it was called.
Yeah.
For for monorepos, and I was using it at work, and then one day they say we are deprecated, and it's like, what? It's like you don't expect that, but it happens. So yeah, I'm afraid the whole time that maybe someday, Evan, you say goodbye, leave you for the community, do it yourself.
That's too big. I would say community to say goodbye, but sorry, Sasha.
Yeah, I think hopefully if we feature a project in the survey, like it means that it's reached a level of maturity where it's not gonna disappear overnight. But it's true, Lerna, that's a good example. Sometimes I think there's nothing we can do about that. Like there's a part of things that we can't control, so we just have to live with it. But I think Lerna is actually was actually taken over by the people that maintain NX also. So hopefully it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, was there something surprising results that you found from 2022?
There weren't that many surprises, or maybe one. Let me see.
Yeah, because front-end world changes things like so quickly. Then I was thinking maybe there could be one or two.
So that question, so how do you divide your time between writing JavaScript and TypeScript? I was surprised that it was so much towards the TypeScript side of things, with a majority of people who only write TypeScript. Well, not a majority, but that's the biggest segment. And yeah, overall, the people who write more TypeScript do represent a majority. And I didn't think it would be that clear cut in favor of TypeScript. And obviously, I know that there's tons of people out there who don't write any TypeScript in tons of companies, but within the kind of the population of early adopters and people who are very online on Twitter and part of that very active dev community, and those are the people who mostly take the survey. Yeah, TypeScript seems to be really almost the norm now, more than JavaScript. And I thought this was the direction things were moving towards, but I didn't think we were already at that point. So that did surprise me.
Yeah, I'm also surprised by seeing this, result. I mean, I took a look at all the info in there, but when you pick this up, it's actually true that I'm surprised that quite a lot of people already shifted into 100% daily writing, TypeScript. And I saw like very few numbers of the people are like saying 100% JS. So I think from here we can see, like the actual, let's say, maybe if I say trends, that would be a little bit too much word to say, but I think we can see, like how people are shifting into.
Yeah, it also makes me feel like I should brush up my TypeScript knowledge because it becomes more accepted.
Well, I actually find ChatGPT very useful for TypeScript. It works really well.
Yeah, it makes you kind of wonder why we are even all still working, right? Like, I feel like, I mean, I can work a little bit and then ChatGPT can take over.
Yeah, maybe you can integrate it into VS Code, and instead of writing the type, you just say, oh, this should be some kind of, API call, figure it out, and then it will. Maybe that's what Copilot does. I still haven't tried out GitHub Copilot, actually, so I should.
Yeah, I hear that people are like getting quite a lot of benefits from using Copilot, GitHub Copilot. But I was thinking maybe ChatGPT could also reach to the same point, or not sure.
Yeah, totally. And also like even like writing things, and it's every single time I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna go there for some ideas, and then ChatGPT phrases it so perfectly that I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like my job is done. I'm gonna go.
Well, yeah, it was funny. I tried as an experiment. I asked ChatGPT to write a press release about a data leak, and like it wrote a whole press release about, hey, we experienced a data leak and our company will make efforts. But then it was very like, it even said our next steps will be this and this. So we made up a lot of things that were all very, very good, like very applicable.
Ooh.
So it made me reconsider that, you know, when if you hear a company say put out some kind of release about any kind of issue, it makes them seem very insincere because, oh, actually it's all very generic. And now I'm taking a second look at what I read online, because yeah, if ChatGPT can do something just as good,
Totally. And even
kind of
like
worrying.
you can derive your strategy from that. Like you're right,
Yeah,
like okay, put out the release, and oh, there's some good tips in
business
there. We
plan, or
should do this.
yeah.
Totally. Coming back to the state of JS, just because we were chatting about this a lot internally, it's not necessarily a surprise, but for me, every year it's a little bit of a shock to see how the division is, like who is taking the test, and it's like a lot less people who identify as female than male, right? And every year I'm like, I know, like, I mean, here we're the majority, but usually, you know, you go to a conference and you're like, okay, so how many women are here? But so it's not a surprise, but every year I'm like, yeah, true. Like, how do you feel about the, I'm lacking an English word, the characteristics of the people doing the survey?
Well, I don't know if you saw maybe, but I actually wrote about this topic very recently, like this month. So what I did is, well, because, you know, I have the same concern as you, but I was curious to know if there was kind of a problem with the survey. And, you know, it's a problem with the survey, but is it only the survey, or is it more like widespread? And as you might imagine, it's actually pretty widespread. So what I did is actually, I compared with other surveys, but what's more interesting, I think, I asked YouTubers to share stats with me. So you might know Fireship, and you know, they also have kind of the same gender imbalance, and then other YouTubers, and then Coder, so Jess Chand, so she identifies as a woman, and she did have a slightly better ratio. So that's actually interesting because it gives us a target. Like if we, you know, if we do a better job of being more appealing, more inclusive, maybe we should hope to be able to reach something that's more like 85% compared to the current 95%, I think, of respondents identifying as men. But you can look, it's actually it's so long that I had to split it in two. There's I also have some stats from e-learning platforms like Scrimba. So yeah, I mean, maybe we can post the link in the chat.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, I already did.
Really cool. Okay. Super Josefine.
So cool. Like I'm a bit sad. I missed that before, but now I have some homework to read afterwards, because it's so interesting, right? Like to see why that is and how we can potentially change it, maybe. Because also, like, I looked at the statistics for the country of origin, and then of course there's a lot of people from the US doing the survey, for example, and of course that's also not representative of the tech community as a whole. But is that a problem, or what are we trying to, you know, like I thought it was just so interesting putting it into the context of the demographics. What's the word I was looking for before? Really, really interesting.
So basically, to summarize my own conclusions on this, first of all, I think there is a problem specifically with the online developer community. I think there's a lot of spaces that aren't very inclusive, even ones that are seemingly neutral, like something like Twitter, I think you might have a lower percentage. Let's say there's you might have 70% of men developer, but on Twitter that might be go up to 80%, and then on something like, let's say, Hacker News, it's maybe 90%. Reddit, it might be 95%. So what I mean is the platforms where people might hear about the survey also carry their own bias, which will just make the problem worse. And then the other thing, what I learned through the survey is that the most diverse segment of the population is beginners, basically. So if you segment by the people who have less than 1 year of experience, or maybe between 1 and 2, it's more diverse, both in terms of gender and race or ethnicity. But then I think the issue here is that, speaking for myself, I'm really bad at TypeScript, which is why I need ChatGPT. And I think if somebody sent me a link to a state of TypeScript survey, I wouldn't take it, because I would be like, well, it's not for me. I barely know what I'm doing. And so I think there's a self-selection effect where beginners are a bit less likely to take the survey, and then women are more likely to be beginners, within, not speaking generally, but just within our demographics. So maybe, so my current thinking is, rather than figuring how to make the survey more appealing to a specific demographic, because I think that's really hard, it's more about how do I make it more inclusive generally and more appealing to beginners. And then the other aspect is, I think that the fundamental problem when you don't have many women, or it could be, I'm speaking about women, but the same applies to non-binary people or people who are minoritized because of their race. But the problem is they don't really have a voice in the results, right? If, let's say women only represent 5%, they have a much smaller voice compared to men. So what I've been doing regarding that is also providing tools where you can highlight women, for example, by filtering any chart to only keep the data from women. And, again, I'm using women here as an example, but that applies similarly to any other segment of the audience that you want to highlight. And I think that's actually kind of a more interesting approach, because changing that number, it's proven really hard. And other surveys have the same issue, even if they have a lot more resources, like a Stack Overflow survey, for example. They have similar numbers, and we can see from that article I wrote that even YouTubers that that are conscious of the issue, it's still going to be really hard to change those numbers. So obviously I want to keep improving that, but at the same time I also want to try other approaches, like focus on beginners, or give people tools to highlight the voices that they do want to focus on in the data. So yeah, I hope that doesn't sound too much like an excuse, because it's really something that I care about, and I'm conscious that it's a flaw of the survey, and it's not fair to women that there are or other minoritized audiences to be misrepresented in the survey. But it's actually a very hard issue to fix. And what's frustrating is there's not that many things that I can do at my level, because a lot of the time people will say, oh, you should just contact women's coding groups, which is not a bad idea. But if I contact a group with like 100 members and 10% take the survey, that's going to be really low compared to the effect of something like Twitter or Hacker News, right? So counteracting that bias is very tough.
But it's such a great...
We always no, just a quick remark that I have a podcast in the Spanish community, and we talk about technology, and we only invite women, and we always share the state of ES and state of CSS surveys so they can feel it. So at least I hope that some of our audience that are mainly women can at least reach the survey. That would be cool. But yeah, we can.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in some way, like there should be like an equal opportunity. I mean, I know it's hard to make it equal for everyone, but equal opportunity for regardless of their genders, race, or the region where they're based, like to know about like there is an opportunity to fill out the survey. So I think like the decision that they would make, like whether they want to fill out or they feel confident to fill out or not, or to decide these kind of stuffs would be depending on them. So that's not something the part we can control, but at least like what I thought is like giving the, let's say, like the equal opportunity to everyone to let them know about like, hey, there's the state of JS, there's the state of CSS, and there's the state of GraphQL. Then they could filter out by themselves like which technologies that they want to fill out because of their familiarness, like of these technologies. So I think what Alba is doing is like something, I would say like contributing, let's say like with a little bit more direct approach to, in this case was like, as an example, let's say like women in tech. And I also was thinking the same for like the, let's say like the, from the race perspective, because I saw like I really was happy that I saw like Japanese people like responded, and they're yay, but the numbers are so small. And I know I don't say issue, but I know the reason, because we are good at like reading the content in English, but at the same time like they might not feel like comfortable with like answering all these answers by themselves like in English. So I saw that there are like a couple of contributors translating into Japanese. I mean, the state of JS, it's really impressive, but at the same time it's not like that majority of the Japanese developers in this case like would have like the same level of understanding or the confidence to contribute. So I guess that's also another factor. But I also was thinking maybe could do similar approach what Alba was doing it.
Yeah, it's interesting regarding the Japanese audience, because every year when I search on Twitter, Japanese is there might be even more tweets in Japanese than in English regarding the survey. So it's very, very active, and by far like it's like there's more people tweeting about the survey than actually took the survey from Japan, which is cool in a way. But I always wonder, well, why didn't these people like take part and fill in the survey? But I think it's tough. Maybe it could be something just like you don't feel ownership in the project, or you don't feel like it's for you. And I think it might be the same issue with women or other audiences, where you are used to dealing with like non-inclusive spaces or non-inclusive projects, so you kind of get disenfranchised and you don't feel welcome maybe. And that's something I really want to change, and I'm always trying to find new ways. But like if you look at a country like Japan, like, okay, how do you make it appealing to the Japanese audience, but also the Korean audience, the Chinese audience? Every time you have to, well, maybe network with the local bloggers or local podcasts, local YouTubers, make sure that they evangelize and make people aware of the survey. And you have to repeat that for every country, every demographic. And of course, it's something that I want to do eventually. But as you can imagine, especially since right now so I do the survey by myself, and then there's Eric, who also helps out, but more on the back end side of things. But we just don't have the resources to do all that outreach work for now. And so we have had help from Google with that a little bit too. So they are sponsors of the survey. But even so, like it's just I think people underestimate the amount of work and how little return on effort you get in terms of emailing people and asking them to do stuff. It's pretty hard. So yeah, it's just a very tricky situation and tough problem to solve, I think. But again, that doesn't mean we're not trying our best.
Yeah, I think it's a common concern when it comes to gathering the, let's say, survey from like whatever kind of topics we have. So I think that's not, let's say, the case for the state of JS or the state of CSS or the state of GraphQL. Related to that, I wanted to. Oh, sorry. Go
No, I
ahead.
just wanted to say, and it's so important to do the first step and reflect on these things and then talk about them openly and address it, because I think the worst thing that you could possibly do would be to just like be silent about it and pretend it's not happening. So this is the first step, right? And then lowering the threshold and saying like, hey, everybody's welcome. It doesn't matter if you have just, or if this is your first year, or if you're just learning, you can still answer. I think that's so important, and it's an important step to take for the entire community, I think, to just make sure that nobody's excluded just because maybe they're new. So that's just what I wanted to say. But Arisa, you had another question. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. I also wanted to hear, let's say, like your comments and thoughts. And related to that, I wanted to ask a little bit more in-depth question. Like, in your opinion, like, what do you think, like, how we can, make the tech industry in general, like, more inclusive?
Yeah, that's the most important question, I think. And when I was writing this article, I started realizing like even small things are not inclusive. Like, like let's say we use words like epic, or there's a lot of language that is kind of coded or a bit like more towards the men's side of things, I think. And there's nothing wrong, with the word epic or ninja or whatever. But if that's all we use all the time, and it kind of reinforces, I think, that the stereotype that developers are men and so on. So I think we kind of need to think things like from the ground up, like look at, I did a lot of design. So in terms of design, look at the colors we use, the fonts, I'll confess, when I thought up of the survey branding, a lot of it is, so I talk about that in the article, but a lot of it is like dark background with light text, and it kind of evokes a programming terminal, but that's kind of not super beginner friendly, because we have this image of the hacker hacking at the terminal,
Mr. Robo, yeah.
whatever. Yeah. And that sends maybe the wrong message, right? It sends the message that, oh, this survey is only for hardcore programmers that want to work for Elon Musk. But if you're just a beginner, don't come here. So it's not things that we do consciously, I think, but because we are, part of that ecosystem that has those biases, we are influenced by them. And so I think what we need to do is kind of rethink a bit everything, like look at our defaults, I guess I would say. If we use these colors, these fonts, this language by default, we don't really think about it. So I think that's what we need to do, be more deliberate. And because I think people, like I would say 99% of people want to be more inclusive if you ask them, but they won't necessarily reconsider things because they don't realize that they're not inclusive. So it's kind of a chicken and egg problem, and we just need to take a step back. And look at branding, language, things like that.
That's so true, because language is so powerful and we use all these words without thinking about them. But if you would flip it around, and if you would say like not a JavaScript ninja, but a JavaScript fairy, like lots of people would probably protest, because they would feel like, oh, that doesn't sound like the very strong man I am, so I think we should, sometimes turning it around helps so much, where you're like, is that actually like gendered language or not? And making it female sometimes makes
well,
the right
I can highlight somebody who I think is doing a really awesome job with that, is Josh Como. So he has a new site called Joy of React. And I think the word joy, it's a women name, right? So it's not a gendered word, I would say, but it does, counteract. It's not called hardcore React. It's not called, React for bros or something. So I think that's what we need to do, right? And even his branding is very round and friendly and kind of, it just makes you happy. He has women in his testimonials. And again, just the name is kind of appealing to everybody. So that's the kind of things I'm thinking about when it comes to being more inclusive.
Actually, thinking about that, I can imagine why it's so, I don't know, scary to do the JavaScript state of JS in the first place. Because you can feel that if you fail the questions, that you don't know anything and you are trying to learn. So if you try these questions and you realize that you don't know anything, that could be really scary. And I think that the problem here is like, we don't have the chance to fail. I mean, if I do a YouTube video and I do something wrong, I have more bad comments from men.
Yeah.
Why you are developing if you can do whatever else, And I'm scared of failing in front of people. But everyone is failing. I mean, the developers that are men are also failing while they are live coding. And that's not a problem, isn't it? But for us, it's double the problem. So usually I'm scared of doing things because of that. And for example, in the state of GraphQL, as I don't know that much, only the beginner part, I will not do it.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure about that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand that. I don't consider myself a good programmer at all. I have imposter syndrome, but I think I am actually an imposter. I don't think it's just a syndrome. So I can relate to that. But then I think when I think about that, I'm like, yeah, I'm just a bad programmer. But I think if you're part of a minoritized demographic, then you will think, oh, it will reflect on who I am more, because there are fewer people like you. So if you're the only person from Japan, then in a setting, then anything you do will kind of reflect on Japan, and that's something that's a big burden to carry, I think, for anybody that's not part of the majority. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I also tend to think, before I take in action, I tend to think like, oh, what if if I say this, for example, on Twitter or in the community Discord, what if somebody will point me out, or nah, I cannot say in a good phrases, but sorry about my English, but harassing, technically, but you don't know this, and that, and I know better this, and that. And then I feel is it because some of the elements that are not directly mentioned in here, but just because what I am, But I also feel at the same time so silly, thinking about it, or even, mention about it, because, for example, if I felt in that way, and then talking to some of the friends who are actually men, but developers, do you think is it because I'm a woman, then they're technically I don't know, harassing, or taking amount, and then they're nah, you're thinking too much. But you never know, if it's true or not. And so it's really, a thin, borderline, if I'm thinking, too much, or, if it's actually true. Yeah.
And even, I guess, even just thinking about it is already an additional mental cost that you have to bear, that, men don't have to care about. So yeah, it can be tough. I mean, yeah. But yeah, the
conclusion is let's do more coding in this channel and fail all the time, so there are other women that can relate to that and be able to do it, in front of us.
I think we should have men that fail also.
Yeah, that's true.
I can.
And that are proud of the fails, It's like, I failed. Vamos.
Yeah. Yeah, I think more people see, more others, making mistakes in a good way, failing in a good way, makes them feel oh, I'm not the only one. They're also, have some human side of it. So I think, even though you feel oh God, it's quite embarrassing to fail in public places like this, it doesn't mean that people will judge you. People I mean, some of the people actually will think like, oh, he or she also have like this kind of, you know, human side of it. So I don't need to feel like I need to make it like too perfect, or like I shouldn't, you know, like say or post something or release something unless it's perfect. I mean, like, for example, like in an open sources, every releases are not perfect. I mean, some of the releases you release it or ship it like with some, I don't know, some broken part. And what it helps you is the community. I mean, regardless of like who is releasing these kind of, you know, like major like release or like minor release, whatever, community will help you. Like, hey, you have this thing not working. Maybe this, you know, like approach might work, or like questioning you, like, isn't it something you could improve? Let's say like our DX. So yeah, I think it's also related to that.
Totally.
Yeah, I have one more question. If you still have time, Sasha, because
Sure, yeah.
we know that you have limited slot and didn't want to occupy you too much. So if you're okay, I have one more question. Okay, so I was thinking, like, what are some of the most exciting projects or technologies that you currently like working on?
So you mean like working on like the frameworks and libraries I'm using, or projects I'm working on like as part of the state of JS?
As part of the state of JS, yes.
So right now I'm actually, so one thing that sets the state of JS and all the surveys apart from other surveys is that we have like an API for the data. So typically, I think the way a survey works is you collect the data, you put it in the database, and then you will run some scripts or some kind of process to compile the stats that you need to build charts and so on. But it's usually a kind of a static, like step-by-step process, but we have a live API. So what this means is, you know, any like the charts, we can query the database and re-render the charts anytime. And that's how we are actually able to show you filters and give you controls. So it's a bit similar to something like Tableau or other like data analysis tools where you can actually change the parameters and re-render the chart. So that's something I've added recently. And you can actually go and use that on the state of JS instead of CSS. There's a little icon, like filter icon next to the charts. But like this month, what I'm doing is I'm rebuilding that API that powers that feature in order to support more surveys. So
Nice.
Because what happened is we started with the state of JS, and then we added state of CSS and state of GraphQL. But every time we added a new survey, we kind of hard coded like the additional API fields, and it wasn't very clean. But now I've rebuilt it in a way where it's all automatically generated. And that's pretty cool because first we can really easily add more surveys now, but also we can automatically generate all the filtering logic, which means that you'll soon be able to filter basically using any question. So currently you can do like, let's say, do people like React or not? And then filter that by gender, salary, and so on. And there's like 10 filters. But soon you'll be able to take that question and filter it by, do the people who like React also like Vue? Or what about what blog they read? Basically, any of the other question of the survey will become available as a filter. So that's the like new features I'm pretty excited about. And so I'll try to port them back to the current 2022 edition, but if not, it will be available for the 2023 edition of State of JS and CSS.
Nice. An exclusive.
Yeah. I was thinking, like, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, even the current filters, which are more limited, are already pretty cool. Like you can already do a lot, so you can go play with them if you have time.
I was wondering, you mentioned that it's actually an API, right? And
Yeah.
you filter out through, let's say, like the questions, and then like generate, like the filters that you applied. I was thinking like how the APIs could recognize, let's say, like these questions, because these questions, I bet, would be like the values would be strings, right? So I was wondering how the APIs could, I would say, like understand the context in there and then generate the data in the end.
So it's a GraphQL API, and it's actually a good fit for that because in GraphQL, it's a typed API definition language, I guess. And so you can, at least for any question where the answers are predefined, when you're asking, what do you think of React? I would use it again, not use it again. All those can be typed. And so the API will know what the strings should be. And so I can actually share my screen to show you. So here, this is a graphical, which is an ID GraphQL. And so here you can see what it looks like, where you can drill down into any survey and any question and select the year.
Nice.
Wow. Okay. I came from the GraphQL background, so this actually really visualized what I was asking.
Okay. So you get the answer, and all of this, there's about 5,000 lines of GraphQL code, but it's all auto-generated from our survey definitions. So, and as well as all the types for all the questions, everything is generated, which is why now it's going to be very easy to add surveys, right? And that's going to actually simplify our infrastructure a lot. Nice. And I'm pretty excited about that.
Nice. This is like what I was looking. This is what I was actually like looking for to see. And I mean, like for people who are not familiar with the GraphQL, but still, like, I mean, seeing, let's say, like the values or types in there might visualize. I thought. I mean, in my case, it helped me a lot because that's what I was like wondering in the question I asked.
Right. And like I said, you can now using all the questions of the survey. So that's actually a lot of filters available.
Yeah. Wow. How long? I mean, just out of curiosity, how long it took you to like initiate like in the current form?
So that refactor is maybe 2 weeks. 6-7 days of work maybe. But I was refactoring the existing API, so I didn't start from scratch. It was a lot of very intense work.
Wow. Okay. That's quite impressive saying that you're not behind the state of JS because that's what I had the question in my mind when I was taking a look at, for 2022. Yeah.
And that API is public, so the current and I'll just mention that really quickly in case people are interested.
Yeah.
But,
cool.
So this is the current version. Is it gonna work? Yeah. So this is the current version. So it's the same IDE, but on the left, the tree is different because this is kind of manually generated and it's very messy. So that's why I'm replacing it by the other API, but both the old one is public and it will be replaced by a new one. So basically it's a way for people to query our data directly without having to, if they don't want to download the entire CSV and run queries like that, they can also do it here. And
okay.
Actually, all our code is open source anyway, so.
Yeah, that's the best. That's the best part.
Love that.
Yeah. Yes, I'm quite sure, like after seeing, like these interesting insights, a couple of people wanna try out.
Yeah, there was actually a state of React Native survey. I will share the link
Yeah, thanks.
chat, and they were able to reuse our code base, like everything from the app to take the survey to the API to the results side and run their own survey. So I think it was a lot of work for them, but it proves that it can be done, and that sometimes it's useful when you open source your code. It was a nice surprise that they were able to do that.
All right. I realized that actually we were streaming like over an hour. Time flies. Yeah.
We didn't realize actually.
Really, I didn't
We got a
realize.
bit carried away.
I just got to know because Sid, behind the scene, in the streaming just told us. So I was like, oh, is it already that time?
Oh, that's a pity because I want to ask something to Sacha. I can ask a little question?
Sure.
Because I saw that in the new state of JS, did you add the tier list that all the streamings are using for maybe checking the fast food restaurants and things like that? And I was thinking, how is the process of creating these new questions with a really cool look and feel?
Yeah, well, every year I try to think, okay, how can I keep people interested? Like if it's just the same exact thing from last year, nobody's gonna look at the results anymore. So, I try to find questions that will get people to talk and share the results. And I thought maybe, since people liked the tier list format on YouTube, it would be good to share as well. And so it was just a way to have a bit of fun. But I actually don't have that much time, or as much time as I would like to spend on new visualizations, just because everything else takes so much time. But in the future, I would actually love to spend more time on that because it's kind of the most fun aspect. It's the most creative, and also collaborate with other data visualizers, like the chart with the I forgot what it's called, changes over time, which has these trajectories. That was done by Amelia Wattenberger, and she is like just an extremely talented data visualizer. And she does a ton of stuff. And I would love to collaborate more with people like that who actually specialize in that area of things in the future. But it's one more thing where I usually, by the time it's like the end of December and I still haven't released the results, I'm like, okay, I just need to finish this off, and I don't have time to do too much extra, but hopefully one day I'll be able to do that. Yeah.
Oh, nice. But then the community members that are in the open source ecosystem maybe can help you to create some new cool stuff. Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, that would be cool as well. For sure. I think basically like this year, my focus was mostly on adding the filtering infrastructure so that people can take the existing charts, even if they're pretty basic, even if it's just bar charts, and then highlight the segment of the audience that they're interested in. So it's true, I haven't spent much more time on actually creating like fancy new visualizations, but hopefully once the other stuff stabilizes, then I can shift my focus back to that.
Nice.
Thank you so much for your time and all the explanations. I feel like we all learned a lot. And I guess you kind of noticed from the way we were all trying to talk at the same time, we were all super excited to have you as our guest.
Yeah,
we really
awesome.
appreciate it.
It was really fun.
Nice to hear that.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining as well.
Sorry, before we go.
Oh, no. Okay, I'm done here now.
I'm gonna be the bad one. Okay. No, I just wanted to ask, like everyone in here, Alba, Sasha, Josefine, if you have like anything we would like to share. let's say like you have something you want to share for the next streaming, or if you have something like cool projects that you want to share in here, then I think Sid behind the scene in here can share the link or the info there. No, just thought about. If not, then we can say goodbye in here just to be safe.
Well, I can always share my other project that I've been working on for 10 years. It's called Sidebar. It's a design newsletter.
Oh,
Nice,
So that's
nice.
some people might know me from that rather than the surveys, but if you want to check out something that has nothing to do with JavaScript, it's
no, but that's perfect.
Sidebar.
I just finished a
I-
UI design course, so I'm happy to follow the newsletter.
Okay.
Oh wait, sorry. I also have something to share. I'm gonna put it in the chat as well. So the title is not very, how do you say, safe for work, but this is a book I just started reading, and it's actually about feminist language, or what words mean and where they come from. And it kind of brushes on the whole, like in what way are words coded. So if that's something you're interested in, it's not at all programming related, but I find it really interesting, so I just wanted to share it.
Thank you.
I'll check that
That's
out.
nice. Yeah.
Really
Nice.
cool. Really cool.
All right. Sorry to throw you a ball like in the end, but I just quickly wanted to do. Yeah. Yeah, we plan to do like another streaming. I mean, GirlCode Coffee Chat, the next edition. The date haven't yet decided, but usually we do like once in every month. So we will tweet about like the next sign up, let's say meetup page. So yeah, take a look at our tweets from Storyblok or me or Josefine or Alba. I would say. All right, with that, we will officially wrap up the streaming. And thanks again, Sasha, Alba, and Josephine, as always. So
And Arisa.
we are very excited to, yes, me. We're very excited to see you, everyone, for the next streaming.
Absolutely.
See you
If you have
around.
any topics you want to suggest or request, you can also always reach out to us.
Yeah.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for joining.
You too.
Thank you for
Thank you,
having me.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.